$9 no-name golf shaft compete with a $40 Nippon Modus Red golf shaft? I don't know. Let's find out. Today we are taking a $9 shaft that I got from Horiko Golf, and we are comparing it versus a Nippon Modus 3 shaft that cost $40. I think it's like $39. Can they compete with each other? Well, before we go look at numbers and we hit some shots, let's actually go over exactly what we are using in this test. What did we buy? So let's go take a look. All right, so here is the inexpensive build. We got those kind of weird grips that I told you about in the first episode. And then we have this PowerFlex shaft right here. What is the PowerFlex shaft? Well, it's a graphite shaft from a company called Horiko Golf. They've been in the components industry for a really long time. Actually, a pretty good place to get some components. This was a super easy process. But there was a small problem that I didn't think about when I thought about what I was going to do for the club heads, right? So in the shaft world, there are three sizes. There's 355 taper, and then there's 370. Most of your higher end clubs are going to be 355. Your more players clubs are going to be 355. While your game improvement irons, things like that, typically are going to have a 370 tip size. That's what the heads are going to be. They're going to be 370 on the more game improvement things. Now there are some benefits to having a 370 head, right? You can always shim a 350. You can always shim a 355 into a 370 head. You can get a shim that makes it a little bit wider, and it works perfectly fine. There's a small problem though. You can't take a 370 steel shaft and make it into a 355. So what you got to do is you have to get a graphite shaft if you really want to go from 370 to 355. And why was this a problem? Well, the ping heads are 355, so they have a narrower opening. Problem is, most of your really inexpensive shafts are going to be 370s. And if you try to do that with steel, well, frankly, you can't. But you can do it with graphite. You can go from a 370 to a 355. In graphite, you take the tip here, and you just really sand it down just a little bit more than you would just for tip prep, right? So you're going to sand it down, you're going to take it down, and then it will fit in the 355 head. So we went with this PowerFlex because it was the least expensive graphite iron shaft that I could find on a bunch of different websites. So that's why we went with the PowerFlex. Just some info on it. It is 75 grams, and then it is an RS Flex. So what you do is you tip it, and what that means is you cut down the tip a certain length, and that stiffens it up a little bit. What does that do for you? Well, if you don't tip it properly, it's going to play a lot weaker. If you tip it more than you should, it's going to play a little bit stronger. There's actually something called hard stepping and soft stepping and things like that, which is kind of the graduate level when it comes to club building. But what we did is we cut it down to the proper length on the tip to get the stiffness, to make it a stiff flex shaft. We cut it down from the butt to get it to be the correct length. And from there, we put it into the ping head. And let's go see how it did overall. let's take a look. Total, pretty close. Carry, it's about a yard less than we saw with just the grip change. I'd equate that more to club head speed also being down about a mile an hour. Ball speed's down about a mile an hour as well. Smash factor is actually higher than it was with the previous shaft, with the base shaft with the grips on them. So kind of interesting there. Smash rose just a little bit. The biggest thing I noticed is the side total. So clearly today I was shut in the face a little bit more. Face angles also more. Side total. Distribution's a little bit further left. Is that shaft? Is that swing today? Who knows, right? Low point was pretty close to the same. It curved more left. The biggest thing that I found was feel a little bit. It actually didn't feel as bad as I thought it would. But we can look at the club path, changed a little bit face angle. Maybe I couldn't feel it as well. But yeah, slowing down the swing a little bit. It could be just a pure swing today thing. I'm going to hit a few more just to kind of see if that's the case. But overall, I'm actually quite shocked at how good it was. So let's. This was actually pretty interesting. I decided to grab my own 7-iron, high-end specs, recoil shafts, prototype 95s. Played with them forever, and for 4 years now. You can actually see here these numbers. So it was a little bit of a swing thing, but I guess it's just a little less consistency with the cheap component, right? Look at the differences here. It's about 1.5 miles per hour, 5 miles of ball speed, which that's more club head, or head than it is shaft and swing, things like that. Path zeroed out better. Face angle was a little bit more control. Much less spin, not necessarily a good thing. Height-wise, despite less spin, despite launching lower, height was pretty much the same average. You can see big differences in carry. You got 143 to 155, and that's pretty much down to that ball speed there. Curve-wise, the cheaper shaft curved 8 feet left, whereas my current ones, not the ones we're testing, but just my current ones, only curve 2 feet left. So overall, kind of interesting. I didn't think they felt I didn't think the pings felt that bad with the cheap shaft. Really didn't, just kind of swinging it until I grabbed my current stuff and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is much more solid feeling. So it's going to be interesting to see how these pings feel with a different shaft in them. But I didn't think they felt bad. It wasn't like it was flopping around or anything like that. It just, I guess, just kind of looking at the numbers, I didn't think they felt bad until I grabbed my Honma. So just kind of an interesting thing here. I wanted to see how off my swing was today, and looks like it's not too badly off. So just interesting thing as we move along is maybe it was a swing thing today, but really looks like it's probably the shaft. So here's the shaft we chose for the expensive shaft for the expensive parts. For the expensive part, I got an NS Pro Modus 3, the red version, in a Tour 120 S Flex, made by Nippon. A really, really nice high-end shaft here. Like it a lot, actually. This has been a very popular shaft for a very long time. Retail on this is about $30, $35. If you go to Golfworks, I'll post the price right here. You can kind of see it. But yeah, it's a high-end shaft. We went with steel because honestly, you can actually find steel tip shafts in this the correct size shaft in steel, whereas with a lower priced one, they don't make them in the size in steel that is really, really inexpensive. So I went with graphite there, but overall, if you're going to want to do a really, really cheap shaft and you're going to do something in a higher end club head like a Ping or a Player's club like from TaylorMade or something like that, you're going to kind of have to go with a more expensive steel option. Or if you want a really, really inexpensive version, you're going to have to go graphite. So that's why I did that, because with graphite, you can kind of taper it down. But that's why I went with steel. I wanted to see high-end steel and see how it did. So we also have here the Ionic shaft. So while we have the high-end grip, we have the high-end club and the high-end shaft. Let's go see how it does. All right, let's have some fun and talk about premium shaft offering and what it brought. So here we move on to the total. We pick up about 2 yards total, but I don't love total with irons just because it's based on you're hitting into a green, not a fairway. So what I look for is carry, and the premium shaft and grip, about 3 more yards carry. That's a half a club, close to half a club. That's pretty good. Ball speed jumps up, or club speed is about the same. Ball speed actually jumps up a couple of miles an hour here. Hitting them higher. The path, a little bit more neutral. Face angle, completely neutral. Look at that face angle. Just a little bit more control. Lowered the spin rate, but I'm hitting it higher. So launching it higher, spinning it less, hitting it higher. The side angle jumps to 2 feet to the left if you really bring it up. The curve goes from 5 feet left, or goes from 8 feet left to 5 feet left. Guys, these numbers kind of hard to argue with here. Yeah, the premium stuff is better in the shaft at least. Let's go back to the office, kind of talk about it, and see if the results are worth the money that we paid. Let's go check it out. So it's time to finally answer the question: is the more expensive part better and more worth it than the cheap part? And with shafts, as much as I want to say it isn't, the numbers were kind of close. You are giving stuff up though when you drop down to that inexpensive $9 shaft, right? The $40 Nippon felt more consistent, had better numbers, weighed more, which, you know, you would think if it's heavier, you wouldn't swing it as fast, which that makes sense, right? We were swinging it just as fast as 50 grams lighter was. I mean, at the end of the day, that feel that you got from the extra weight really made a difference. The consistency of that shaft really, really made a big difference in how I played. Now, breaking it down, kind of thinking about it, is there a big difference between something like that Nippon and maybe a Dynamic Gold where it's a little bit less expensive, or even the Project X, right? It had the Project X in it before. I didn't think the Nippon was that much better than the Project X. You had a little bit better numbers than you did with the Project X, so maybe it was worth it from the Project X. But if it were me, I'd probably be going something in that Dynamic Gold Project X range, just to kind of see a little bit better improvement. I don't think I'd go super, super cheap on the equipment, but I also don't think that $14 grip, that $40 shaft is $50, $55 to build one iron versus $10. Do I think it was 5 times better? It's pretty close. What I would do most likely is take a couple of the expensive components and mix and match, right? I don't think I'd go with that super cheap grip, but I also wouldn't go with the Ionic either, like I said in the previous video. With the shafts, like I said, I'm not going with that $9 shaft. It just wasn't good enough. But I don't know if the Modus was worth the extra $40, was worth the extra $30 over that shaft. I don't know if it was. But maybe I'd pay an extra $15 over that cheap shaft and get something, like I said, like the Dynamic Gold. That's going to run you about $25. So then to fix an iron or completely change it, you're looking at $30 a set if you went with something like a Dynamic Gold plus a Tour Velvet grip, or even one of those star grips that I mentioned. You know, you kind of look at those and that's about a $35 per club change. I like that a lot. I think the biggest thing for me was going to be the feel, the consistency, and I was most shocked by the numbers. I thought the numbers might be a little bit closer because while I was swinging that less expensive shaft, I actually thought it felt pretty good. I took a couple of swings with it. I wasn't like, this isn't half bad. But I just couldn't find the center of the face. And maybe it was a swing issue. That's why I grabbed my personal 7-iron that I use not just for this testing, but that I use on an everyday basis. And I pulled it out just to see what would happen. And man, we were smoking the ball that day. So it really was the club that was, providing the inconsistency over just it being my swing that day. If I had pulled my club and my swing wasn't doing very well that day, completely understandable. But we picked up a ton of ball speed same day. We did all that. And my club most resembled the premium shaft offering. So with all that being said, I don't know if I can recommend going with a $9 graphite shaft. Would this test have looked a little bit different if maybe I had a 370 head and I didn't have to taper it down? Probably not. But overall, I think the big challenge is finding that middle ground. What is a good price to pay? I'd say probably something in that $20 to $30 range for a shaft is probably somewhere that we kind of want to live in. Anything more expensive, I think you start to run out of the benefits of it. So overall, don't cheap out all the way, but you can cheap out a little bit here and there. Well, that's it for the iron testing. We did grips, we did shafts. And next up, I think we're going to move into a putter, and we're going to see, are those really expensive putter shafts worth it? Find out next time.